that the same is true with the new National Forest Office on Route 4 with that construction, that helps spur other investment. But piggybacking on the idea of a community center, co-working space, one of the things that the town is going to get is some money from the last federal relief package. You know, it's not $1 million, but it might end up being, because we don't have county government, it might up being a couple $100,000. Bridgewater took an old school and a private group started developing it as a community center. They're going to have a daycare in there and other things, a senior center, etc. They this past year got a $400,000 community development block grant. I mean, that's federal money.
Let's come back to the
there are options.
There's options, and we're going to list a bunch of those, and then we're going to get our team to pile on and list every potential option for technical, human, and financial resources to drive this forward. So we're going to add that all up into a platform. What we want to do for the next few minutes is especially hear from people in the community, their ideas for the action steps that the task force would be taking. Al, did you want to share something?
Yeah, just thinking, I don't know what point we do this, but Mendon is not an island. And so it would be, even though we're doing kind of, you know, personalized planning and personalized thinking, it'd be really good to know what the communities that surround us are doing so that we don't either A, duplicate or find ourselves in a competitive position with them, which might be untenable for one of us and not maximize the possibility of all of us.
Right. So collaborate as you go with other towns and the region to, like if you're redoing that corridor, so that it fits with the plans and work going forward. And Ed will be an important resource there. I'm really going to turn a lot to the resource team in the resource conversation to add their ideas on ways they can help or their perspectives on other things. But one of the things I'm interested in is, like, you've got some very granular things, like having some session to spend time thinking, what are the kinds of businesses we'd like to attract to the corridor? What would we like it to look like? What are the conditions around the federal highway? And what's possible within the right of way? What are the legal opportunities? Then looking at different sections of the Route 4 corridor, because you're not going to do everything at once. You could be evaluating who owns which properties, what their plans may be, what might be the options for a committee, for the town, for a group of citizens to get together around redevelopment, or even attracting in a developer. And then with the sense, in terms of what Al just said, of collaborating with other towns, being aware of how it fits with the development elsewhere in the corridor. And one of the things that we find at VCRD is it's good to have like big long-term goals. Like, we're going to develop a housing project, we're going to develop a community center, but it's also great to have some granular things that you would do and that you could do with volunteer labor or with small grants in your first year to build progress. So while you're planning, you're also doing, and you have visible signs of progress that start to build that sense of identity that everyone's talking about, and that this is a place, that there's something distinct. Are there things that, it's so like people want to redevelop downtown St. Johnsbury, and they start by painting a couple park benches and putting in flowers. Are there things that are starting points in this that would be, that the community could rally around and just do right now to improve the corridor? And I'll go to Patty and then Joanne.
I'm sorry, I think I had my hand up from before.
Oh, okay. Joanne?
Yeah, I think that the beautification aspect, there are things that can be done probably pretty quickly that you'll notice every time you drive through. Mm-hmm. There was talk at the first meeting about signage, and Killington has nice signs, and frankly, Mendon has nice signs, and they have an identity and a logo, which is pretty nice. Mm-hmm. It would be fairly easy to do something around that with plantings, to put lighting on them, and that these days could probably be a solar light, which would give you enough so that any time of the day that you drove or night that you drove through, you knew you were in Mendon. And there was something attractive about that welcome from both directions. And that also goes for trying to work potentially with businesses. People have talked about the coffee shop that used to be the general store, which has great stuff, by the way. Yep. And you know, places, little businesses like that, are there possibilities of small grants to help people paint the outside of their building, light their sign? Again, solar lighting works. Tough in the winter, depending on where you are, but you can do things like that pretty quickly. And they're the kinds of things that will, I think, you know, draw people's attention, and people will notice that here, oh, I'm in a different place. And locals, I hope, would look and say, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, this is my town on the move.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice. Okay, Sarah, and then Hannah.
I'm going to pass on some comments that have come to the town office, but Fred Bagley is not able to attend this evening, but he's also a member of our planning commission. And one idea he came to the town about is to invest in some of the pole flags and inserting poles along Route 4 in order to hang some of the decorative flags like Killington has, to identify Mendon as Mendon, whatever that might be. He felt he's done a lot of traveling around the United States, and he always seemed that the towns that were doing best, or at least looked like they were doing best, had these types of decorative flags. So I just wanted to pass that on. As well as there were a number of duplicate telephone poles along Route 4, just with the changeover of GMP raising the poles. And we've worked with them for the last year and a half to try to get the PUC to put pressure on them to take down the duplicate poles. And I think we're down to 2. We had 26. So that was all scattered up the Route 4 corridor as well. So that's just a little bit of input. I do want to let you know that our delinquent list is extremely low. So you won't find that these blighted properties are actually delinquent in their taxes. That's a good thing. They're still paying taxes, but I didn't want to start marching down a road that you're going to find our delinquent list is very, very low.
Yeah, your information to the committee is going to be extremely valuable in all of these processes, Sarah. So thank you. Hannah, what's your idea?
Well, so having moved most recently to Mendon from Killington and being part of a small part of all that went on with the branding and signage, et cetera. And thank you, Sarah, for mentioning the flags. Is we had some sort of what we called pocket parks on Killington Road, and that allows for people to stop and take a moment. So some of that money was it was through our beautification. Some of it was through the beautification committee of the Killington Pico Area Association, which is the local chamber of commerce. We did receive some private grants, or not. I'm going to call them gifts. I mean, they were really gifts from an individual.
Well, let's come back to the funding after, but your idea is to develop some pocket parks? Well,
it's one idea, right? It's a popcorn idea if the committee likes it, but we're looking for ways to beautify. We have also talked about ways to get people to slow down and visit our town. And so what natural resources do we have, and what spots might draw someone to stop and actually smell the roses in our awesome town?
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
When I was a kid, we would be driving between Burlington and Pittsburgh, where my grandparents lived, and you'd always just pull off the side of the road and have lunch. And you just stop in a little dirt circle parking lot, and that's what everyone did. And you could have places that that would be nicer than that, and that people would want to be at. Other thoughts on shorter term action steps or big long-term things that you would like to see as results of collective action? Yes, Patty.
So I was thinking that maybe we could throw a COVID's over party, painting party. That would be a community gathering. We would bring potluck. The kids would have, we could figure out a playground idea. The rec, I don't know, do they work with Mendon. Brings along all these toys and playthings that to events. You know, it might be a way to get to know one another in person, to celebrate the end of this, and also maybe to get a little painting done.
Get a little painting done. Like have a bit of a beautification part to it.
Yeah.
For those who want to come early and plant trees or flowers, we already know that we can use this part of the corridor. We're going to do this thing together today. Jessica.
Someone had mentioned bus stops and safety, and I don't know if that's something that, how big of a project it is, if it's just a matter of making the right phone calls, but something, it's not really great area, it's dark, and if it's if it's something as simple as contacting the right people, I think some safety or some lighting and getting the bus stop area is a little bit up to par. Might be.
Where is the bus stop, Jessica?
Where is it? It's right across from Old Town, or is it Old Turnpike? Is that where it is, everyone? On Route 4. There was just an accident up there recently. And
there's a number of different stops that the bus stops at all of the hotels going up the mountain. And there's a lot of people that commute via the bus up to Killington to work and also down into Rutland. So the bus stops are actually along Route 4 in various locations.
Yeah, so let's put at the action idea, Jessica, by your leave, would be to look at those different bus stops and what they might need for beautification or for lighting, or in other ways to make them more attractive and more vital in the community.
And safe.
Safe. And safe. Yeah, safe is really the key thing. I don't really care how pretty they are.
Okay.
I was going to add clearly marked because I don't know where many of them are.
Yep. Okay. Okay, that's an action step that people could be taking. Are there other ideas that ought to be on the table? And we've got, let me just see here in my timeline. We've got a couple more minutes here before we start talking about resources.
This just kind of goes along with the idea of like the pocket parks or like creating an identity for Mendon. My family lives in Pennsylvania. And so when we are driving back from seeing them and we're coming up 87, there is one rest area on 87 kind of before you get to the Queensbury, Lake George area that has like an outdoor playground, and then they have this like beautiful welcome center with restrooms and stuff that my kids are obsessed with, and we need to stop at every single time we are driving back. It's got, you know, it's not a huge playground, but it's got like a zip line thing on it that they just love. So even the idea of like, you know, whether it's next to what becomes a general store or, you know, next to an information center about mountain bike trails or something, but like a little park that when families are driving through Mendon because they're staying in Killington somewhere, their kids see it and say like, hey, we should stop there.
Does anyone know if the National Forest Center is going to be that accessible that it would be like a rest center for people on the highway? Or is it more of a business office?
They, Paul, they will have an information center there where you can pick up information about the forest and education. We have requested that they put trailheads there with parking to go up to the Canny Trail and Blue Ridge Mountain.
Okay.
We haven't gotten word that they are actually going to do that, but we're working on it.
So it may be, it may fulfill something of what Danielle's talking about, but let's keep Danielle's idea as a distinct idea at this point, as something to explore as a committee. Are there other, it's really quite a good list of things now that you have as potential ideas to work forward as a committee. And we could try to put them in order, or Jessica and I could take them overnight and type them up and put them into like, here's a step-by-step list of the ideas on the table for action by the committee as starting points. and present them back to you all in the next day or so, alongside the resource list, if that makes sense. And I see a couple of people nodding. Anyone object to us doing that and sort of framing this, putting it in a language? It's not, we're not going to put our own priorities in it or anything like that, but it feels like it's a really good list. Let me just run through them, and then we can start talking about resources, and probably additional ideas will come up as we do that. But really doing that process to evaluate the kinds of businesses that you'd like to attract. What could the corridor have on it that would really enliven it and make it a dynamic place for the future? Evaluate what conditions you'd need to work under in terms of federal highway regs, what's possible within the right of way in terms of beautification, but also what are the conditions? Are you going to be able to do a crosswalk? Are you going to be able to do a cutout? Some places you may not even be able to get a road cut to something. And then you have the opportunity to look at that corridor in sections. Maybe one section's already pretty good and you don't really need to concentrate on it. And then there may be a section with more derelict properties that are of greater concern. So doing some of that, thinking about the different parts of the corridor and what might be optimal for each. Then evaluating who owns those properties, what may be their plans, what might be options for a working group of citizens to do in terms of different kinds of properties that are there. Connecting and being aware of what other towns are doing, how the corridor stretches from Killington side down to Rutland, what's the regional plan and regional collaboration that could happen to move some of this forward. But then in the short term, you can also do some beautification. You can put lighting on the welcome signs to the town, maybe do some plantings and beautification right there. Potentially have some flags on poles that would mark that you're driving through a real place that has a unity of purpose along the corridor. Potentially develop certain places where people could stop the car, pull off with a picnic table or with other features that could make it like a little pocket park. And that could be good for locals, and it could be connected to your outdoor recreation resources as well. Have a celebration, come together as a community and say, hey, we're going to be working together to change the world. We're changing the Route 4 corridor. We're kicking this off. You're all welcome. COVID is done. Vermont is strong and we're victorious with kids, toys, maybe music. Then another sort of granular one is look at the bus stops. Where are they? They're not very well marked. People don't all know, even on this committee. What do they need to be safer, to be better lit, to be more accessible? And then look at this idea of, so many people are driving to Killington. You have all that traffic and then through the whole corridor. Could Mendon be a place where they stop and there's a playground and there's facilities for people to, take care of business? And then we want to think about what resources might be available to do some of these things. And I'd love to hear from members of our visiting team, but also from people within the community. The greatest resource is going to be the community itself. It's people in town who say, I'm going to work together on this, because if there's no local spearhead of activity, then none of the grants just fall out of the sky to you or anything, and none of the supports, none of the technical assistance. People like Ed don't know who to work with if there's no one working locally. You need to, the leadership has to come from the community, and then others can help. But who would like to take a moment and share? Maybe we start with you, Ed. Sorry to name you so quickly, but are there ways the regional planning folks could help the community on some of these issues?
Yeah, I've got 5 things. So I'll go through those quickly.
Yeah, 5 things in 1 minute.
1 minute. So here we go. Mapping. We can help with mapping. Adam's suggestion about doing an inventory of what's there, we could definitely help with that. Also with what Joe was saying about sectioning off the corridor, that's something the RPC could do to help the community, just what we would do for the town. Number 2, we've got a brownfields program that we do assessment work for properties. So if some of these properties that are in rough shape, the redevelopment is being held up because of a contamination or a perception of contamination, we can do that assessment work. We can help with grant writing. And the things that are coming to mind on grant writing are, I'm hearing a lot about, well, we could have this on the corridor and we could have this business. a lot of towns have done a retail leak analysis to actually get a consultant to come in there and say, well, this is what you might have demand for in your community, or the market is saturated with this, you don't need that sort of thing, or you won't get something like that there. So we could help grant writing to get one of those. Also possibly grant writing for, this might not be a popular suggestion, but some demolition program. You know, maybe some of these buildings just need to go down for a while until they're redeveloped, because it might be better to have a grassy field rather than a dilapidated building there.
Cool.
We obviously can do planning and zoning. We just did some town plan work with Terry, but Mendon does have zoning and subdivision regs we could tweak to get the development that's desired. And then finally, we could do some VTrans coordination with Joe, and because the road is the road, and we're probably, I don't know how much you can change there, but with the geometry of the road the way it is, you're going to get a certain type of development.
Yeah, we're going to have to go fast here because there's a lot of potential resources that can follow you. And I want to respond to, I don't remember who said the thing, what's going on with federal money and so forth. And there are going to be, you know, ARPA, the current American Recovery Plan, has got significant dollars, some of which will come to the municipality, but some of which will be available for competitive projects statewide. Some of those projects will be transportation projects. A lot of money in state budgets have been freed. So at this point, the legislature is considering $5 million in Better Places grants, for example. Maybe Ed's shop could help you guys write a grant, or Alyssa Johnson from our shop could help you put together a grant for a pocket park or other defining characteristic things, maybe even the flags running down the road. Those things are things that the state and Agency of Commerce has come to see as core interests in recovery, in terms of marking recovery and building a sense of local pride and stuff. Jake, do you want to say a little bit more about other resources that come to the top of your mind? And maybe we could do a quick go round with Max and Joe and others sharing some of the potential resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the Department of Housing and Community Development, we support these program called Designation Programs, and one of Joe's pieces of advice that was really good is to, I think, try to find those nodes or activity centers where you can build on existing assets or clusters of activity in the corridor. And I think I read in the previous notes that there is a cluster of historic buildings, maybe by Maple Spice. It's been a while since I've been through Mendon. But the Village Center designation is used as a platform for a lot of granting priorities, and that may or may not be the location that you want to focus on for improvements. It may be that you'd be looking at, you know, bus stops where a trailhead is, where you could do some welcome signage and have informational resources. So that's one of the approaches I would take, is try to look at those places where there are clusters of activity or crossroads, and that build on an existing asset. And if one of them is a village,
you guys could help them get that kind of status and help them get grants from it.
Yeah, we can come out and help do a village center designation for a historic center. The other programs I'd have you look at is the Vermont Outdoor Recreation, a granting program, particularly if you're looking at, you know, a location where you might be doing some gateway treatments with some signage. I administer the municipal planning grant program, and we work a lot with the regional planning commissions. It funds all types of projects. It could be zoning or zoning and land use, like Ed talked about, but it could just be a simple looking at new gateway signage. So those are a couple of things that I'd mention.
Yeah, those municipal planning grants would fit into driving a lot of this stuff forward, and getting one of those to kick off and give you some resources to drive first projects would be amazing. Lyle, I know you do this work through the whole county, and do you have some ideas on resources? And you Sure. asked about what the grants may be, but you probably know better than any of us.
Well, sure. The best part is what you're hearing now, which is the planning part. If you do the planning, the grants will come. If you have something shovel ready, if you had something shovel ready right now, Ed and I are putting together a list because we are asked by the Agency of Commerce and Community Development to put together what are the priorities and what's ready to go. And there is going to be money out there, and through the federal money that may come in, you're looking at perhaps $100,000 that will come directly from the federal government to Mendon if this list comes to fruition, that you could use for example, water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. So I would suggest you look at, do you have the infrastructure for broadband that you want right now in your town? Or if you do that pocket park, do you want to make sure that it's Wi-Fi friendly so that people will go there and the parents will be able to do what they want to do while the kids are having fun? So bottom line is, good planning will get you the grants that you want. And I have to do a little advertising here, Paul, because in our organization, we've got about $700,000 in the bank that we're ready to loan out to businesses that want to grow or start. We are considered the lenders of last resort, so we take chances. So there are options that we have that we could also bring to bear. So shovel ready is key. Planning is essential. Ed's office is fabulous. Jake's office, fabulous at doing both those things.
And both of your offices, Ed and Lyle, you get invited to meetings in local communities, and you help nurse projects forward oftentimes, right?
We enjoy doing that. It's fun. So yeah, and we will hook you up with the Small Business Development Center. So if someone wants to start a business and they don't have a business plan yet, we'll get you started with that.
Yeah, we're going to put your names and phone numbers right in this thing for everybody. Naturally. Joe Segali, as you look at the corridor, are there resources from the Agency of Transportation that either technical or support or dollars that could help some of these kinds of projects?
Yeah, well, I think one of the maybe the easiest things to do was a question about what can and cannot happen within the right of way.
Yeah.
There's been some great ideas that people have brought up, and someone also mentioned that there's a lot of right of way there, meaning it might go beyond the edge of the road quite a ways, and so there's more further away you get from the edge of the roadway, the more flexibility there is. We do maintenance agreements quite often with communities for various things. Sidewalks is the most common thing, but things for plantings and such. So that's a real possibility. So I think that is maybe just a discussion at some point when you kind of zoom in and figure out where maybe you want to do some of this work. And there is I guess I could provide the link, but we do have something called the right of way hub, which you can just go online and you can see where the right of way lines are on an ortho photo, and anybody could really work with that just to see how much elbow room there is.
Yeah. Would someone from the agency, like after COVID, would someone from the agency come and walk through the corridor or drive through the corridor with people to look at, really think about all those issues with the community?
Yeah, I think we could arrange something like that. From the district, of course, the district office is right there, as well as whoever else we need to have there. Maybe another person that's in our right-of-way unit or something like that. So it's sort of right on the spot technical assistance and advice might be really helpful.
Yeah.
The other thing, I often plug this, and it's a competitive grant program, but it's the Better Connections grant program. And we're doing those every 2 years now. And we just had the last round. So it's going to be another, year and a half before the next grant applications are due. But, the reason I suggested this segmentation is to really think and focus on, where are the areas you want to focus on, and that can help you develop a really good and competitive grant proposal. And that the Better Connection program can really help you develop concept plans and other things that I think can really set the groundwork for, going after other money. And I'll mention, we know with federal grants in the past, they've focused a lot on shovel-ready projects. So what do you get? You get pavement projects and bridge projects. But they're starting to change their tune and thinking about shovel-worthy projects. And so, but that means those have to be developed, right? And so, but we're still, so this could be 6 or 7 years down the road, and we might be able to use the money now to do a bunch of asset management stuff that will free up money later on for these other projects that can kind of be developed and come in behind.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're thinking right now. So I'm really encouraged. I think, you know, it's going to make planning work really valuable, because in the past, we just kind of didn't have that avenue.
And again, we will reach out to you guys each to layer in, you know, who should they call for these different things and stuff in your recommendations, and we'll pull that all together into a platform to share with the community. I do want to give Max Muse an opportunity to speak. I'm worried we're going to all get cut off in about 5 minutes and dropped back into the other group. And Max leads USDA for Vermont. Do you want to share some perspective, Max?
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. A lot of great information. I can't emphasize enough about partnering up with the people that are the conduits, the Economic Development Corps and the planning commissions. And not only telling them what you want, but understanding what they're already working on. I think there was mention of the American Recovery Plan money. If you don't have a local rep on the committee or access to one, I think you want to, because Vermont's process is a legislative one on how that money comes and gets distributed. So you want them to work for you and tell you how this is forming and coming out and how your community can access it. As far as USDA rural development, we have a rural business development grant program that could potentially fit for signage, branding, marketing, websites, communication, feasibility studies. So, and as Paul said, we're going to list those resources in a document there. I think there's, you know, there's going to be some other places that we want to look for, like the EPA smart growth money that the Planning Commission yet again can apply for. I think Paul touched on it, short-term, long-term. The ARPA money is going to be the fastest money, and then these other programs are going to be for the other areas. I think examples between the Regional Planning Commission and the Economic Development Corp, the state of Vermont's small enough. There's a lot of communities that have beautification committees that might be doing some really good work. The Vermont Arts Council is another one on engaging maybe some artists to be able to do some activities there too. So I think, you know, you have a really big bucket there that all of us can participate in. But in general, USDA, we have our business programs that are going to benefit the business community. And then we have our community programs, which are going to benefit the not-for-profits and the municipalities. We look forward to providing those resources.
And again, you call Max Muse and he'll give you all the advice that he can to help. You know, basically what this process is designed to do is to rally connections and advice, but also the sense that all of us will answer the phone and work to support the progress of the committee as it sets direction around these different aspects of stuff. Sarah posted in the chat that you're applying for a $200,000 grant right now for structural stuff. Sarah, do you want to speak to that?
Well, that's a structures grant, and it was because Joe mentioned that if you get grants in other areas, it might free up some funds. The structures grant is a VTrans grant that we apply to almost annually in order to upgrade culverts. And that particular grant is for Wheelerville Road. Although we're looking at the Route 4 corridor, many of our discussions were about resources in Mendon and assets in Mendon, and Wheelerville Road is one of them. Many of the state trailheads are for recreation are off Wheelerville, and so
we're going to be, let me just share a couple things. We're going to be working with the overall chair of the process to think about who might be the most obvious and ready chair to help lead this effort and to help convene this effort in an ongoing way for the Route 4 development. And I'm going to, and so the one other thing that I'd love to do in the next 54 seconds is to say, when do you want to meet again? Could we set another meeting time like 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out? And we wouldn't be bringing the whole visiting team. It would really be your team getting together for a first meeting, but you'd have the map in front of you of everything that came from this meeting and the subsequent, in the previous meeting. Is there a date and place that would be a good, or it'd probably be a Zoom meeting, huh? Is there a time that would be good for it? Could we try and set a tentative date?
Same night, same time.
Same night, Wednesday night. How far out, Al? 2 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah.
Wednesday. That would be May
5th.
May 5th. Wednesday, May 5th. Well, we got that done. we just set a date right May 5th for our committee. But now we're
wow, you got further than us, Paul.
Oh my gosh. Wow. The agenda says that we're now going to hear reports from the facilitators. So I'll go first, Jenna. We had a big group. Obviously, redeveloping the Route 4 corridor is just a huge issue for the community, and lots of great energy, lots of great ideas. I'm just going to run through some of the ideas that hit the table that the committee is going to wrestle with as it moves forward. Like, do an evaluation of what kind of businesses they would like to attract onto the corridor. You know, what is it you're really talking about? What would be great? What are some of the kinds of niches that are possible? Evaluate the conditions that a federal highway builds for you. You know, what are the things that you can and can't do? You can't do a crosswalk wherever you want, probably. You can't do curb cuts wherever. What's within your power, and what's possible within the right of way that surrounds that corridor? Can you do tree planting? Can you do beautification? Could you have a little pocket park? Then look at sections of it. You know, maybe there's parts that are really in pretty good shape, and then parts that are really the big target to start. And break those out so you can think of them strategically. Evaluate who owns different parcels, what maybe connect to them, what are their plans, what might be some of the options in terms of potential redevelopment of those properties. Always keeping in mind the idea that a community center may fit in here somewhere someday. Connect and be in touch with other towns, and you've got the RDC director, you've got the planning committee, regional planning director here, so that you're in touch on their plans, on what's going on in the corridor on both sides of you, and how it connects with the regional opportunities for larger projects potentially. But also do some stuff right now. Begin with a couple beautification projects. Could we put lighting up on the town signs as you enter, and some plantings? Are there other beautifications you could do? Could you have signs on poles right down the corridor that show you're in Mendon, this is a cool place? Potentially start the idea of developing a couple pocket parks. And we heard of resources that are out there to get grants for that kind of placemaking work right now. And then think about how you bring the community together to celebrate that this initiative's going on. Have a big post-COVID party. Like, we're coming out of the woods. We're on Route 4 with a big party to celebrate the fact that we're going to take points of vision, and we're going to be moving Route 4 forward. You got music, kids activities, and so forth. Then there's bus stops on there that are poorly lit, or they're not very obvious. People don't know where they are. Look at how those could be made more safe, better lighted, and maybe even improve the look and feel of them. And then someone had the idea, we should evaluate the idea of doing a rest center. Like, there's this place that I always go, and my kids are desperate to get out of the car and play in this place. So have a playground and facilities for people who are traveling so that they do stop. And could that connect with the new Forest Service development or with a community center somehow, is another issue to evaluate. Lots of potential resources with ARPA funding coming to Vermont, with the Better Places grants available for placemaking, pocket parks, and so forth. The VTrans has planning capacity to lend. The RPC, the RDC, USDA, some tremendous resources, and great to have that team at the table tonight. ACCD has both grant money and technical expertise, and most of these organizations are saying, and we'll come back and help when we're called upon. But it's all about local leadership. It's about having focus, setting direction, doing some homework, and then bringing in people who can lend support and expertise. And one really cool thing was that Ed Bove shared that they can also write grants, and they can be partners in the planning process right through. So, and of course, VCRD has some of that capacity now too. So really a really dynamic thing. Alyssa did a great job keeping notes. We're going to type this up so it looks good, bring it back to the committee next week. And we set a date for Wednesday, May 5th for the next meeting. It will probably be a Zoom meeting, and we'll look to work with Jenna and a potential chair for this group to begin the process of driving this work forward. But what a great group of people. I really appreciate it. And I'll turn it to you, Jenna, to summarize what happened in the outdoor recreation conversation.
Great, thanks, Paul. And yeah, Danielle and I we'll work together to look at our signups and identify 2 people that can lead each of these task forces. So outdoor recreation. I mean, I think first of all, the group really noted that there are some really great recreation resources in Mendon today. And also there are some opportunities for the future. So I think where we landed on a structure for next steps that this group will take is one, really starting from a place of figuring out what's there today, an inventory of what are the trails that exist now, what are the gaps, what are the needs, potentially reaching out to the community to find out, what people would like to see. So there's that kind of inventorying and surveying. But then there's this whole bucket of ideas that the group discussed that are really kind of shorter term actions that can be taken today to start to work on outdoor recreation in the community. One is certainly this opportunity of partnering with the National Forest that's building their headquarters in town and is already doing some work kind of to the north looking at potential trail development. And so there's some opportunity to partner with them, learn from what they're already doing and maybe expand to Mendon. But there's also some areas like the Aiken State Forest that's in a process now to collect public comment and to maybe some opportunity to improve parking to a really popular trail. And also, some other trails that are on town-owned or nearby town-owned properties that could be improved today for use and shared. So some of those kind of shorter-term work, but then also some real vision for longer-term projects, for multi-use trails, for capturing some of the energy going on over in Killington around mountain biking, and really thinking of the full array of potential uses: mountain biking, hiking, snowshoeing, but also hunting and fishing and just getting people outdoors in the community. So looking at that kind of multi-use future of potential projects. And then maybe one day holding some events to celebrate and bring people together around this opportunity. The cool thing about this is that just like in the other group, there are a lot of resources coming to Vermont communities to support this kind of work. I mean, we see the governor and the legislature in support of funding for outdoor recreation, and communities like Mendon that have gone through this process to identify those needs could be really well positioned to access some of those funds. So, and certainly, again, some strong regional and state partners that can work on that. And then the last piece I'll just mention, because it connects so closely with the other group, is there's a real concern around the safety of getting from the west to the east, right? Like to get to the recreation opportunities, you've got to cross Route 4. That's really challenging. So one of those longer term initiatives really needs to focus on, is it an alternative path? Is it more safety along Route 4? So just a point of connection and partnership between the groups there.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jenna. Jenna, can you summarize what we do from here?
Yes. Yeah, so this is our final big group meeting with Mendon, but this is kind of where the work begins, right? We've just gone through the process of identifying these 2 priorities. Danielle has stepped up into this chair role and agreed to kind of help with coordination going forward. So Paul and I are both going to take our notes from this evening, build concrete action plans based on those notes, list those different resources we identified with contact info, and pull those together and work with Danielle to identify chairs. So we'll do that. We'll be back in touch. We do hope that you will all sign up to be on these task forces, to work in these areas. We have in the chat, Nick has just put the link to sign up for task forces. If you joined one of those groups tonight, there's no requirement to continue to work on this, but if you're interested, it's really important that we have local community members willing to step up and work to move these things forward. So please click on that link, sign up to continue to work on these, continue to stay in touch. We'll also share those tomorrow morning in an email with the full list, and please share them broadly in the community. No requirement that you had to participate in this to join those task forces. And then we're going to take all of this, all the notes, these action plans, contact info for these resource team members tonight, and for those visiting team members with us last month, and we'll pull those into a final report that we'll print and we'll share. Maybe at the town office, we'll work with Sarah to make sure that those are available to all of you. So I'll turn it over to Paul to close, but let me just say thank you. It takes a lot of courage and faith to dive into a virtual process during these times, and look forward to maybe a party a year from now to celebrate in person with all of you.
Yeah,
so,
we would love to come. Jenna, thank you. And I want to especially thank Jenna for all her leadership in framing how this transitions, leading the entire process really of these community visits now. And Nick and Margaret and Alyssa are also completely engaged and working really hard on this, but it's remarkable how much there is to just the tightness of these sessions and getting it together. I just want to say that we will also offer some training to the people who step up as chairs, and in terms of how to manage good meetings, how to stay connected, how to keep people involved, how to make sure that everyone's taking on tasks and they're accountable to the group so that things are driven forward step by step. Not everything's done in a day, right? But we've seen work like this have transformative impact. Every place in Vermont that you can think of that's doing really cool things with their downtowns or with special places or with community centers or with outdoor recreation, they all started by getting together and getting to work, right? It wasn't like there was no magic to it. It's just people stepping up and say, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to work on this steady on, and we're going to avail the resources, because it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. It's the places that are organized. I really liked a question that Al asked earlier, like, are we making decisions for the whole community? You're just making decisions to start work, but the invitation goes from you and from everyone, that everyone in town is authorized to lead. Everyone in town is invited to be part of this. And you'll find that within these groups, the democracy of the process and the energy and involvement of other people are going to lead in new directions, add on to whatever ideas we've come up with so far, and that you're going to have a momentum that is really about power. It's about the power of the public, the power of democracy to transform things. And we see it everywhere we go. It's about you all. It's about stepping up, standing for your community, having vision, saying what you want, setting the conditions for other people to come in and be successful, inviting neighbors to be part of something bigger. And when towns do that, they not only get these great things done, but they have that identity and they have that sense of community, and they're connected, and they're happier. They're happier towns. So we commend you. We thank the visiting team for being with us, putting on the extra hours beyond all the hard work everyone is doing right now. We thank Sarah and the hard work you do for this community. We know it. You're really great at what you do. The select board for inviting this process in. The planning commission, we know you guys are doing great work. We've seen it. But it's when you tee it up and build this collective spear point of activity that you drive the big things home. And we're really excited about where you are and the ideas on this table and the connections to resources that you already have and that can be availed to drive this stuff forward. So thank you for making democracy real in Vermont. It's all of our job, and it's an honor to work with people who are doing it. So we'll stay in touch. Jenna will be back with you very soon, and onward and upward. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.